board on the matter at hand. Once all concerned citizens have spoken, the board will then ask any additional questions of city staff. Lastly, the applicant will be given 3 more minutes for a rebuttal or other closing comments if they so choose. All speakers must speak only from the podium here at the center of the room by the screen and begin their presentation by first giving both their name and address. That address can be either your business or residence as appropriate. In the event, you may need to be contacted for any legal notices that are related to the outcome of this appeal. All speakers are requested to remain courteous and to focus their comments only upon those facts that demonstrate whether or not the criteria established by law have been satisfied. Speakers are also asked to ensure that they're respectful of the time considerations, and if necessary, the board chair will limit further comments by a speaker if they exceed their time limitation. The board chair will then close any further public comment on the agenda item. The board will immediately deliberate the request and will make a decision here today on the appeal. Please note that it takes at least 4 affirmative votes for any zoning appeal to gain approval. If your appeal is approved today, we ask that you wait until at least 1 week from today's hearing if you'd need to contact the city's Permit and Development Center to obtain any necessary building or sign permits that are related to your appeal. This will allow the decision of this board to be documented in the form of a decision and order, which will be provided to both you and city staff. Any appeal that is approved by this board must be implemented, constructed, or otherwise utilized within 2 years of the date of the decision by this board, or such approval shall expire. Finally, the decisions of this board can only be appealed in the Iowa District Court. So if you believe you've been harmed by an error made by this board, your only remedy is to seek relief through the district court within 30 days of the filing of the board's decision and order. If you believe the zoning regulations applied by this board are wrong, you may petition the city council to change those regulations for future considerations. All material written or otherwise used today as part of any presentation is part of the permanent record. So if you have anything you want to present today that you haven't already provided a copy of to city staff, you'll need to do so accordingly. And you may contact city staff after the hearing if you'd like a copy of anything presented today. Just some quick housekeeping items. We'd ask that you avoid any undue conversation in the audience so as to limit distractions during the hearing. You're doing just fine with that. Please ensure your cell phone has been silenced. Sounds okay so far. And if you need to use a restroom, you can just walk through the doors. You don't have to go back downstairs. There's restrooms past the staircase on your left. Once the agenda item you're interested in has been completed, you're welcome to leave the hearing. And we'll have a 5-minute break in the meeting around 3 or 3:30 if needed. I'm hopeful we won't need to consider that. So, going back to our agenda, like I said, we'll work everybody through the process here. So we're first going to look at our consent agenda, well, our overall agenda. Bert, do we have any changes?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bert Ross, Deputy Planning Administrator for the city. No changes to the agenda. Just point out we had 4 items on the consent portion of the agenda and then 1 discussion item. On item number 2, we did get 1 comment card in opposition, but we feel that the recommended conditions should be able to address the concerns there. But if there is somebody here to speak against item number 2, staff would suggest that be moved for discussion.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for the summary. So the way the consent agenda works, we have items 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll read through those. But city staff is recommending that we approve either the zoning exceptions, the conditional uses, and related appeals to these 4 items, subject to some staff recommendations for conditions to carry out implementation of these appeals. So would there be anybody here that would be opposed to granting a zoning exception on item 1 at 317 East 6th Street? It's related to some signage. If there's anybody that would be opposed to us granting that requested zoning exception at that address, just raise your hand, and then what we'll do is we'll put it on the regular portion of the agenda and we'll hear the case. Anybody want to not support item 1? Seeing no hands, item 2 is at 3901 Ingersoll Avenue and a related 618 39th Street. It's a conditional use request related to a farmer's market. Is there anybody that would be opposed to us granting a conditional use there subject to staff recommendations? Is that a hand up there? You'd be opposed to that, sir? Okay, so we'll remove item 2. We'll hear that case. Item 3 is a conditional use request at 4600 Park Avenue related to request for sales of alcoholic liquor, wine, and beer as an accessory use to a sports and recreation participant facility. Anybody opposed to granting that conditional use? Just raise your hand for the moment. Seeing none. Then item 4 is a zoning exception at 6155 Southeast 14th Street. That's primarily, looks like, related to signage here. Is there anybody that would be opposed to the board granting some exceptions on our signage requirements at that address? Seeing no hands. Okay, so that would leave us with items 1, 3, and 4 on consent. Unless the board members have any concerns, would there be a motion to grant approval subject to staff recommendations on items 1, 3, and 4? Motion by Marlis, second by Rhonda. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. All right, motion carries 6-0. So if you were here for items 1, 3, or 4, those appeals have been approved. You'll get a copy of our decision and order on that about a week from today. For most of you, you're going to need permits and signed permits, so we'll get that to you, and then you can go ahead and get these uses carried out. So thank you for coming in today. So we'll just take a moment here to kind of get reset, and what we'll do, we'll start off here with item 2, a conditional use request at 3901 Ingersoll Avenue and a related 618 39th Street related to a temporary use of the property for a farmer's market. And we're going to have Catherine give us the background on this.
Chair, members of the board, Catherine Dreyhaus, planner for the city of Des Moines. And as mentioned, this is located at 3901 Ingersoll Avenue and the accompanying property 618 39th Street. So the property is located at that corner of Ingersoll and 39th Street. Many of you may know of the new restaurant that exists there, Oak Park Restaurant. The applicant is coming, I'll kind of scan through some of the photos of the site as we go through this. The applicant is proposing a small-scale farmers market in the parking lot on Monday afternoons, currently on Monday afternoons from 4 to 7 p.m. They want to do 1, possibly up to 3 events in about July of this summer to test the water, see how it goes, check for hiccups, things like that. They will be in the back part, as you'll see in a minute, of the parking lot, so this is kind of the area that we're looking at right now. And then this is looking from the rear of the restaurant north on 39th Street, just for some context. Let's see. It looks like I was there about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So, and I'm going to zoom in just so you can see. Down at the bottom is Ingersoll Avenue. On the right-hand side is 39th Street. And then, again, they are looking at parking for the vendors in the rear, food trucks, 1 or 2, kind of in the middle with some seating, and then it's a little hard to see, project it, but the yellow space is where they would have live music. They understand and have agreed that they will only have non-amplified live music for this event. And then vendors in the red space, additional vendor parking over here. There will not be on-site parking for the market, but there is street parking along Ingersoll Avenue, and I believe the applicant can speak to additional parking arrangements that they've made. They are planning to have bicycle parking and Kaibo, and then they are looking at, I think this might actually be a little bit older, but I think they're looking at putting up signage and barricade. It'll be out of the right-of-way, but blocking, vehicle traffic during the market into the parking lot. And then we have narrative from the applicant. I'll just kind of scroll through this a little bit if you have any questions, but generally summarizing what was already explained, they said they're planning on a maximum of 11 vendors. And then, again, temporary seating, bike valet, temporary A-frame signage, and then, let's see, okay, this looks like it's the up-to-date one. After the neighborhood outreach meeting, they did say that they are going to be encouraging attendees to walk or bike to the market. A free bike valet will be provided, and they've secured parking arrangements with nearby Central Presbyterian Church and Financial Plus Credit Union to use their parking lots. So, and they're working on finding volunteer crossing guards to assist people crossing the street if they park at the alternative parking areas. And then, so staff is recommending approval with our standard conditions. The request is based for 5 years based on staff's recommendation. That's just sort of what we've seen with farmers markets when they've come through, is that oftentimes it's okay to go ahead and recommend the 5-year period, which is the maximum period they can ask for. Again, we've indicated that they'll operate no more than once a week between May 1st and November 1st during any year, and it's limited, with each event limited to 1 day in length. We've limited their hours to 4 to 7 p.m. There shall be acoustical, non-amplified music, live music for any music that's allowed. And then, as always, any temporary use shall be subject to reconsideration by the Zoning Board of Adjustment at any time the zoning enforcement officer determines that the event has become a detrimental or nuisance. Our consent map, and then I've got consent cards afterwards so you can see what we've had come through. As you can see, we're getting mostly concerns about the parking conditions in the neighborhood. And then, let's see, here's our, oops, I'm sorry. I'm also going to come back here. We received this just a little bit before the meeting from the North of Grand Neighborhood Association president. He had planned to attend the meeting, but is unable to at the last minute, so. And then I'll go back to a description of the neighborhood outreach. I can come back to that if anyone has any additional questions. And we did have a letter, I believe it's about 4 pages long, in opposition. And it seems, it's been a little bit since I've read it. I believe the main concern, again, was the parking and then possibly just the congregation. But the neighbor also expressed that they were excited for this. They just wanted to make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed, and handle it in a way that those living near it would be not as heavily impacted.
All right, is that what we have anything else, Catherine?
I believe that is it. Thank you. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Justin, questions for Catherine?
Hi, Catherine. It sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the applicant was asking for 3 activities per season?
So for the first season, they are asking for up to 3 seasons, and then after that, they were going to reevaluate how the program was going, what hiccups or incidents came up that needed to be addressed, and what their capacity was for additional.
Okay.
And we, as we do with a lot of farmers markets, recommended that they go ahead and ask for the 5-year permits to allow them the flexibility to make those decisions and respond as they needed to what was going on. So
Is that also the reason why you recommend having it worded as you did in the condition 2 about 1 activity per week?
sorry, I'm going to go back just so we're looking at the same thing.
That'd be item 2, right?
No more
Condition
than
2.
once a week between May and November, where each event is limited to 1 day in May.
Yeah,
Yes,
so is the city's recommendation is that way because to allow flexibility? Is that why?
Well, to allow flexibility without ending up with a multi-day market or something like that. So this would be they would be allowed under this condition to operate once per week. I think we went ahead and tried to leave it a little bit flexible in case they decide to move it from a Monday to a Tuesday. But that way they can choose that 1 day a week that works for them.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Catherine, could you put the vicinity map, the consent map,
Yes.
back up there? I just kind of want to look at how a few things relate to each other. There's been a lot of changes on this property in the last few years. That's evident at the time the aerial photo was taken. But do we have 2 structures on this, in essence, this site at this time?
So there's the structure, the main restaurant, and
Okay.
then there would be over to the west property line is where their dumpster enclosure is located. And then if I'm not
There was
misspeaking,
something on what I would call their site plan drawing, if you will, that seemed to show another structure on the northeast corner. What's up there?
this is, I believe, I'm going to have to let the applicant confirm this, but I believe it is their like on-site garden that they utilize for
Okay.
produce.
Okay. So related to that, with the use of the property as it is with the restaurant, is there a requirement to always have X amount of spots available for customers, or is there some kind of parking ordinance requirement yet?
There was, and they went through the site plan when
Yep.
they were going through for the restaurant. They did request and receive a waiver for reduced parking requirement on site. I'm not aware of the specific numbers and how
Sure.
that panned out, but so their their plan though for the market, as you noted with the submitted site sketch, is to use the on-site parking for the market.
Yeah, because that's kind of where, I start to either add or subtract here. It looks like the vendors themselves take up all of the available parking. You require for the main use to have some number of parking. So since you're recommending this, you're already assuming that, well, the restaurant parking will move out onto the street.
And
Correct.
I did neglect to mention that the restaurant is closed on Mondays.
Oh, it is,
And
okay.
so that is why they've currently chosen Monday as
Aha.
the day to have the market.
Okay, I was going to say, that business model is not going to work for somebody then. Okay. All right, so the site use is generally closed on Mondays, so this
That was
is
my
in
understanding.
essence an alternate use.
Yes.
But again, would still require that all the parking is now off the site. So kind of back to the overview map that showed the radius and the consent there. Some of the concerns or questions mentioned parking, or they mentioned agreements with other locations for parking. Can you
And-
quickly, and I can ask the applicant this too, but where are those other locations as related to this? I don't see any parking lots to any degree.
May have to ask the applicant.
That's fine,
For
yeah.
confirmation. I believe they stated it was with Central Presbyterian Church, and to be honest, I'm not entirely sure.
That's okay, I
Where
can
that's
ask them.
located, and then the Grand and 38th Street
Okay.
is where it's located. So it would be kind of,
That's okay, yeah, we can have the
Southeast.
applicant address how
and
the
then they
vicinity.
said that a local credit union as well, that's
Mm-hmm.
in the vicinity.
And just one more quick one, the neighborhood says, hey, we're cautiously optimistic, but you as staff are recommending, oh, yeah, let's do this for 5 years. I don't like to necessarily have all kinds of conditional use that are short-term. Generally, if we approve a conditional use, it runs with the land, not the operator. So if we approve a market with no limitation on coming back to us, it could happen forever, no matter who runs it, right?
Correct.
So why 5 years? Why not, hey, let's try it this season and see if it works? Any reason?
Going to ask Bert to.
We don't really have a good reason. Again, Bert
Okay.
Dross, planning staff. 5 years is what the retired code allowed
Okay.
farmers markets to request.
Okay.
It seemed to work for many decades, so
Okay.
we just, the applicant, like you mentioned earlier, the applicant did initially apply for a very limited number of events, but we felt that it was probably in their best interest and everybody's best interest to grant them a little more flexibility so they're not back in front of you all any sooner than they have to be.
Right. Well, that's actually a good answer of why you picked 5 years, because in essence, that is the maximum for any farmer's market then, right? They always have to come back up for review after 5 years?
Technically, under the new code, you could grant it in
We
perpetuity.
could now, but under the old
Yeah,
code,
under
it
the
was
old code,
5
it
years,
was
and they'd
5
have
years.
to come back for a renewal, kind of like a driver's license.
Right.
Okay. All right. Good enough. All right, thank you. Okay, any other questions for staff? If none, then the applicant or representative of the applicant, they've got the floor. We just need your name and address, and you've got up to 10 minutes.
Sure. Hi, my name is Lauren Koloff. I'm the executive director of the Avenues of Ingersoll and Grand. We're a nonprofit organization. We're a SMID district, so our primary goal is to enhance this neighborhood through maintenance, marketing, promotion, and special events. And Kathy Furman with Oak Park Restaurant is also here, so if you have questions for her, I know that she's happy to come up and answer. So Kathy is a member of our board of directors, and she approached us late last year and said, I'm closed on Mondays. What would you think about a farmer's market? And my initial reaction was that this is an opportunity that we shouldn't pass up. Oak Park has been a really amazing addition to our district. We love when we can collaborate with business owners, and as the Avenues organization, we're always looking for new ways to activate our district. So we have our big Ingersoll Live event. We've recently added a holiday event called the Peppermint Trail. We're doing some new retail promotions. So I just thought this was a really great opportunity to activate the district and provide a community building opportunity for the North of Grand neighborhood, which I also live in. I live just a few blocks away from here. Also, like, the hub of our business district is further east around 28th Street, so I thought this would be a great way to share the love, if you will, keeping the momentum of our district going further west. So that's sort of the background of how this idea came to be. Talking with Kathy, she has really high standards for the restaurant, so we envision this being a very highly curated market with vendors who sell at Oak Park. If you've been there, they list all their vegetable and meat providers. Oak Park has a dream, a goal of creating some products for their restaurant. So we really hope this will be a really unique and special market. And I also want to point out that we do not want this market to grow or become the next downtown farmers market. We want to keep this really small and curated. If you compare this even to some other smaller farmers markets, for example, the Beaverdale Farmers Market, which I think a lot of us are familiar with or have attended, that has 45 plus vendors. This would have like a maximum of like 10 or 11. So we're intentionally keeping it small, and we want it to stay that way. Like Catherine had mentioned, I had originally applied for a 3-market series this summer. Again, we were just kind of thinking of ideas, but then after the neighborhood meeting and hearing their concerns, we have agreed that we're only going to hold 1 market, and probably in July. And after that market, before we hold any other markets, we're going to come back with the neighbors and the North of Grand Neighborhood Association and talk about it and see what went good, what went bad, if we can tweak things, if there's a desire to move forward with further iterations of this market or not. So we definitely want to be good neighbors, and this is an event for the community, and so we want everyone to be on board. So that's the goal. I'm trying to think. Parking. Mal, you had asked about parking. So like you said, can you show this? This is just the layout again. Yes, all of the like the designated parking on the map in pink, it says vendor parking. So that is, meant to be for the vendors because they usually like to be close by for their products and everything. So there is no attendee parking on site. There is parking on Ingersoll Avenue, but we realized that's probably not enough. So we worked out arrangements with Central Presbyterian, which is where the Oak Park employees currently park, and they have a very large parking lot. They have two parking lots actually, and then Financial Plus Credit Union, which is on Ingersoll. And so these both parking lot owners have agreed that we can tell people to park and walk. Financial Plus is a 3-minute walk, and the church is a 2-minute walk. So we feel like that's pretty reasonable. The walk from the church does require crossing Ingersoll Avenue, and there is no like crosswalk at 3900. So that's why we mentioned having a potential crosswalk guard there. But we really do want this to be like a neighborhood community event and have people walking or biking there. And so North of Grand Neighborhood Association was really excited about the idea of helping us put on a free bike valet. And last summer I attended their national night out, and they had a really good crowd, and I didn't see hardly anybody drive there. Most everyone walked or biked with their kids and their families. So I definitely think it's something that residents in this neighborhood would be open to do. But of course we realize some people may drive, so that's why we've tried to work out some of these parking arrangements so to take the stress off of the neighborhoods. But right now our goal is just to have 1 market on a Monday, probably in July, and after that re-meet with the neighborhood. I have contact information for everyone who attended our meeting. There was about 9 people there. As well as the neighborhood association president, to reconnect with them and just see how things are going before we proceed. I'm trying to think if there's anything I left out. Kathy, can you think of anything? Okay, but happy to answer questions.
Questions for the applicant? Okay.
Oh, yeah, Justin.
Hi.
Yeah, Justin.
I do live in this neighborhood. I live right half a block, actually,
Okay.
from this site. And so I have kind of seen some of the concerns about the parking, so I'm so glad that you've kind of taken that in consideration with your proposal. I wonder if you, it sounds like it was the city that sort of recommended the 5-year. Do you think it would be any hardship if it was limited to a year to see how things work, and then allow the applicant to come back in a year with, evidence to show that it was a great and successful project, and that the neighbors are on board? I'm just wondering if you think that would create any hardship.
Sure. Yeah, I want to say that the city was like really helpful with us going through this process, because like I said, it started as sort of an idea, and then you have to like take it through this whole process. So Catherine was really helpful to sort of guide me through this whole process, and I did take her recommendation for 5 years, because she meant then there is like a cost and an administration time for us to be part of this process, and I am like a one-person staff. We're a nonprofit organization, and I feel like Kathy and I are very earnest about our intentions here, that we do plan to meet with the neighborhood association and neighbors after the first and hear the concerns. So if you did want to limit it to 1 year or 2 years, 3 years, whatever, that wouldn't be the end of the world, but I just want to let you know that we are genuine in our intentions here to make this a neighborhood event and hear the concerns, and not, just start planning a full summer of markets without talking to them. And also, like I said, I'm a one-person staff. We're a nonprofit. Kathy's really busy running this restaurant, so we have no intention of becoming like a weekly, farmers market. We just don't. Catherine kind of mentioned it. We don't really have the capacity to do that. We do want to keep it really small.
So with that in mind, so it doesn't sound like your intention is to do one every week.
No.
Okay.
No, we are going to have one this summer
Right.
on a Monday night.
So what would be the ideal then? Once a month?
Gosh, I think we just have to totally see how it goes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've never run a farmer's market before. I'm learning here as I go, so I think we'll totally have to see how it goes, I guess. Kathy has a vision.
Thanks, Lauren. My name's Kathy Furman. My address is 3750 Grand, Unit 801. And this was just a sweet little idea that we came up with, and we thought it would be a fun neighborhood building event. I've been before this board before, and I'm surprised you're still the chair. It feels like it was a decade ago that I was here.
Why does that surprise you?
Well, I'm just like, seriously, on my way here, I was like, I wonder if Mel's still the chair, and sure enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've been part of neighborhood associations before. I was president of Greenwood Historic for probably 4 or 5 years. I've been on the other side of this table, and my goal from the very beginning of this project was to be incredibly respectful to the neighborhood association. So we've met with them early, we've met with them regularly. If you have not had a chance to read Laura and Amy's letter word for word, I would recommend you do that, because it resonated so well with me. Every one of their concerns is a concern that I have as well. So, we're going to have this one little farmers market, take a lot of time to dissect it with the neighborhood association. With respect to future plans, we don't know what we don't know yet. I'd love to have one a month, and maybe two if it's so well received by the neighborhood association that they welcome us for two markets a month. I would love that. But no, we're not going to do anything without the blessing of Northrop Grand Neighborhood Association. Any
Thank you.
other questions?
Yep.
Yeah, since both of you are up here, and staff showed the picture of 39th Street, but I didn't get any detail from staff. Is there parking allowed on one side of the street, both sides of the street? Is that parking limited? Is there no overnight parking? Do you have any idea what the parking limitations are?
I believe the parking limitations are parking only on the east side.
Okay.
And I don't think with respect to hours there's any limitations.
Okay.
There can be overnight parking.
Okay, which is good to know. As most people seem to forget or never knew, parking on city streets, a car has to move once every 24 hours. So that's not going to be, see, Lauren's like, what? Yeah. So when people park their car on the street for a week at a time because they're not using it, illegal. Keep that in mind for your neighborhood, yeah. But if you're going to have somebody attend the market, they're going to be there for no more than 3 hours, and then they're gone. So you're not going to, it sounds like there's no limitation on the hours of parking on that street. There are some city streets, you can't park overnight, or no parking between, 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. But I don't think that'll be an issue here. That was just one of my questions on the logistics of how things lay out here. We don't give business advice or economic advice, but I might say, if you're going to do this, you're going to want to do this on a consistent basis, at least for probably this first, quote, growing season. Sometimes I hear about an event, and I'm like, oh, darn, I missed it. But if they don't have another one planned, or it's like, well, we'll do it when we feel like it, I end up drifting away. So I would encourage you to, staff is giving you plenty of latitude here, it sounds like, that you could do this one night a week, May through November. They're giving you quite a bit here, so, yeah. And I've been on the board 16 years, just chair for 10.
Okay. My memory serves me
Yeah.
well then.
Yeah, the illustrious William S. Gray used to be the board chair here before he went to city council up in Ward 1. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
So since we have a packed house here, is there anybody else that wishes to speak in support of the applicant? We start with that. Seeing none, is there anybody that wishes to speak in opposition to the applicant's request? If so, come on up. And that's okay. We like to hear, even if somebody is not upset and up in arms, sometimes we like to hear some counterpoints. You got up to 5 minutes. We just need your name and address first, please.
Patrick Carruthers Green, 623 39th Street. And my hesitation was more that I don't quite consider it negative or
Sure.
opposed.
That's fine.
A little more neutral, I guess.
That's okay.
And I had prepared my statement here. I'm going to apologize in advance. I prepared it just to get all my thoughts out in a coherent manner. Some of these might be misunderstood, or there might have been changes, and it may be repetitive on some of the conversation. So just wanted to apologize for that in advance. I'm speaking here on behalf of my family today. We live kitty corner to the northeast corner of the property. I was going to try to point it out. Sorry. Right here is where we are. And so I'm just speaking today to request, in my view, a minor change to the proposed conditions to the request. Mainly that the duration of the farmer's market permit be reduced from the 5 years to 1 year. That seems to kind of be floating around. I did attend the informative neighborhood meeting hosted last week by Lauren and Kathy. It was helpful to hear Kathy's vision for the limited market and encouraging to hear them recognize the unknown impacts that the event may have on the neighborhood and more specifically our block. I very much appreciated the stated commitments to reviewing the market immediately following the initial week's event and prior to any subsequent dates. And I believe that both Kathy and Lauren recognize that their event will bring an unknown level of traffic to our area and that they're interested in mitigating this to the best of their abilities. They both indicated that they're heading into the unknown on this venture and hope to bring an appreciated event to the community. During our meeting, Lauren indicated that she had initially submitted an application requesting a conditional use permit for 3 yet-to-be-determined Mondays this summer, as they intend this summer's 1 to 3 markets to be a bit of a trial run for the concept. Subsequently, city staff recommended that she expand the time frame to the maximum allowed to provide greater flexibility and avoid repeat visits to this board. We'd like to request that the conditional use permit duration be reduced to a 1-year period to acknowledge the admitted unknown impacts of the market on our neighborhood. Our primary concern is the amount of vehicle traffic that the event will draw in. One of the significant benefits of living in our North of Grand neighborhood is its extremely walkable nature with many accessible amenities. Expanding to a wider footprint, the same can be said for the greater Avenues area, and we would expect strong turnout for this market from our immediate neighbors on foot or bike. However, we also know that both the Avenues and Oak Park have rightfully established themselves as attractions to the greater Des Moines area and expect an event sponsored by these two renowned brands will appeal to this wider community. Our understanding is that provisions have been made with Central Presbyterian Church at the corner of 39th and Grand and the credit union to use their parking lots for customer parking during the markets. And this will be prominently displayed on the event's marketing materials, and this is much appreciated. As I stated previously, we understand the concept as a trial run this summer with some expected kinks to be worked out collaboratively. In this spirit, it seems that an initial 1-year permit more adequately provides a guardrail to protect the immediate neighborhood and allow us to determine if the proposed event meets everyone's expectations. Thank you.
Any questions for Patrick?
So are you and your neighbors just concerned about not being able to find parking when you get home from work?
Not so much the parking. A lot of us do have off-street, the immediate neighbors that I communicate regularly with and that we are community with. Most of us do have predominantly off-street parking, one or two vehicles here and there. The apartment building there at to the east across from Oak Park, they have a very limited parking lot, and I know that there's probably, I'd say 4 to 8 vehicles nightly that do park on the street that are associated with that apartment building. It's primarily the potential additional traffic through the neighborhood, coming down from 235, cutting through Pleasant, Woodland. That's the predominant concern. It's the parking, yes, it's going to happen. I'm a advocate that streets should be parked on, so I'm not going to personally get too up in arms about that, despite, maybe intermittent frustration that I can't park in front of the house or something, or someone visiting can't park in front of the house.
Okay. Okay. Patrick, thank you for coming down today and sharing your comments.
Thank you all.
You bet. Anybody else that wishes to speak on this item? I'll just put it that way. All right. Seeing none, before we go back to the applicant, do we have any further questions for staff or zoning enforcement officer or anything anybody wants to add?
I've got one question.
Sure. Dave.
Number 11 allows you guys to bring this back in front of us if this becomes an issue.
Very
going
good
forward,
point.
right?
That is correct.
So I don't see any reason why we ought to limit this for less than 5 years, because if it becomes a problem, you're going to be told about that, and you're going to do your job and bring it back.
And we can
Pretty good assumption, isn't it?
Yeah.
So-
That's usually what happens.
I guess I'm sensitive to what the neighborhood's saying, but I think I'm also going to be sensitive to what we're being told. There's going to be one market in 2024. If I heard everything correctly, one.
Sounds like 1, maybe 3.
And
but
then there
I think
might
they're
be
limited to
1 to 2 a month in subsequent years, not every week. I get what you guys want to do with the 5-year thing. I just wanted to make sure that this can come back in front of us, so I don't think we need to
Okay.
worry about micromanaging and limiting it, is my thought.
And we can get into that, Dave, during our
So I just
discussion.
want to make sure that was right.
But Dave brings up a very good point, and I often like to say this. So conditional use is like getting a driver's license. It may not have an expiration date, or in this case, it may have one, 5 years. But if you violate the terms of the conditional use, like violating the terms of a license, it can be reviewed by enforcement, and it can be revoked. So we often tell people that, hey, this is great, you got a conditional use, but you just can't take your rope and run with it. Don't get yourself tripped up. Because there are conditions that go with this. And if we do have congestion and problems and noise, yes, it could come back to us 3 months from now, and we could take it away. So, all right, any other questions for staff? Okay, so applicant, just as a courtesy to you all, you'd have up to 3 minutes. If there's anything you want to add in closing here, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, guys, for your question, and thanks, Pat, for your comments. I think the only thing I wanted to address, there was some confusion, I will admit, at the neighborhood meeting because I had applied for like 3. But then after our discussion is when Kathy and I determined, let's just have 1, talk about it, see how it went. And I get if there's a desire for more this fall, like maybe that could happen. But we really do we will have 1 and then meet with the neighbors,
Yeah.
and before we plan another one.
So yeah, to your question, Dave, I think there's a chance there could be more this summer, probably up to 3 max. But this one market, we meet with the neighbors, we make sure that there's a consensus that we're coming to a plan that everybody's happy with before anything else happens this year. Okay?
And for your information while you're here, we do run into this sometimes. When we grant approvals, as staff is saying this, we're not going to require that you have a market once a week in this time frame of May through November. But if this is successful, you can have a market up to once a week. So we aren't trying to, I don't think, negotiate in between. You don't have to underpromise to us. If you just wanted to apply and say, we want to do 1 market this year, you could have done that. But what's on the table in front of us is if we were inclined to grant this, you could do this up to once a week if you want. Keep you really busy. So I think it's time now then for us to close further comment and we get to deliberate. And Dave, you started us off pretty well here. Go ahead.
I think this makes perfect sense. Let's give them a chance. That if it becomes an issue, it's going to come back. The last thing Oak Park
That
wants
is
to do
true.
is create a bunch of ill will with neighbors or anyone that comes to this event, because they're trying to draw people there for their main business, and that's running a restaurant.
On the other nights of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
exposure.
You know, if this gives them some exposure to maybe some of the various ingredients and vendors that they use in the restaurant, and some people want to be able to engage in that, I think it's great. And I've got full confidence that the city's going to help protect that neighborhood if there's an issue. But I see two people here representing the applicant that's the last thing you want to do is create an issue.
Justin, you also had some concerns about maybe some training
Well,
wheels.
and you know, for a thriving downtown, we need things like this. Yeah, like I'm supportive of activities like this. On the other hand, we have to strike a balance between the needs of the neighborhood and the needs of our commercial friends. And so, you know, I've been on this board long enough that it's rare that you see an applicant come forward and then the recommendations from the city are twice as much as what they're asking for. So, you know, they don't know how much they're going to do. They don't, you know, one event, you know. So I feel like there's enough unknown there and there's enough concern from the neighborhood where why not limit it to a year? See how it works. If it does, yes, they have to go through the process again. I know that, you know, that takes time, money, but unless they're willing to just say, yeah, we'll do 3 events for the next 5 years. I mean, there's a couple ways to address this, right? You could either limit it once per month for a season, you know, for the season, or you could say unlimited for 1 year.
That's possible. What I want to do here is, Marlis, you had your hand up.
I just
go
wanted
to
to
you.
say, first off, I'm quite envious, being on my own neighborhood association board, that they have this great idea, and that it looks like it could possibly be a really great event for the neighborhood and others. And first off, and I believe what the 2 women were saying about making sure that it was going to be the best for the neighborhood. So I'm good with it.
Heather?
I'm in agreement with Dave in that I don't see any streets being blocked off. You know, I know that the area has a lot of congestion. I go there quite a bit. I go actually right across the street twice a week for Pilates. But I will say that that's not 4 to 7 p.m. on Mondays. And it seems like a very intentional idea where they're going to be taking a lot of feedback into consideration and asking for neighbors to talk to them. And I agree with Dave. I don't see anyone wanting to make an enemy out of anyone. And there seems to be an abundance of parking if people are willing to cross the street, which heaven forbid people have to walk, right, if they're driving to the market. But Beaverdale seems to do okay with their market, right? And they block off a few streets, don't they? Or am I wrong?
Jump in.
I don't think Beaverdale blocks off their street. They have a parking lot type of setup thing. But I'm thinking my own neighborhood has one, and it's on a busy street, and they do block. Well, I mean, actually, I think you can drive through it. So you're just driving slow. It's just kind of a little more slower, but you see these vendors, and you can actually buy things. I mean, it is just a nice, and it's only once a week, and it's a small. I mean, it's not like downtown, but it's just nice. And if you know it's going to be consistent on that day, alternate routes are easily to plan if you don't want to go through that section where they're having it. So that's easy in my neighborhood to do. I like it.
I agree with you, Rhonda. I feel like there are a lot of different ways to get to this part of town. Is that part of Ingersoll torn up yet?
Yeah.
Or is that like a running
What part
joke? There's
hasn't?
always going to be a part?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, and I know they're genuine. I mean,
Sure,
I know they're going to take the input from the neighborhood. So that is not the issue, but it's, when you have flexibility and then not knowing kind of what sort of the goal is and having some, concern from neighbors, that's why I brought it up, so.
Okay, can I ask you a question then? I mean, how would it be any different than something Plymouth does in their parking lot? Like, you know how they do that yard sale, or the people donate their whatnots, and Plymouth uses the money for funding. Like, that doesn't happen very often, and I went to that before all of these condos, went up around that area. So has that changed the dynamic a lot?
I just know that Plymouth has a massive parking lot, and they have, levels.
Yeah, they have a parking garage there,
They have a
don't
parking garage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to compare the two. Because
Yeah.
one's more in a dense population versus where Plymouth is.
So if the applicant decides that the appetite for this is more than the allotted parking, it sounds like they're willing to try to find more off-site parking ideas for it. And that's why I'd be open to, the 5 years, or what Justin was suggesting, and do a one event a month too. I'd be open to either.
Okay, wow. So this is a nice proposal here all the way around, but to get our arms around it, yeah, this is a little more interesting than I thought it might be, because I agree with all sides here. One thing to keep in mind, and I give you credit for this, we've had people before doing things that would have needed conditional use permits, and they're not in front of us, and they were causing problems, and there were complaints, and there were issues. And it's a whole lot more difficult to say yes to something when, in essence, the horse is already out of the barn on the issue and running around. You're coming forward with this from square one to understand the conditions and understand the implications before you get ahead of yourselves, and I appreciate that. I always say asking for permission rather than forgiveness is a whole lot better to get kicked off on the right foot. At a minimum, if we're inclined to approve this with staff rec, I think you get it. And that's, I think, what Dave was getting to. I'm a firm believer in your vendors have to make money or they're not going to show up. So if you can do that off people biking and walking, we don't worry about the parking. But if you need to make it off people who need reasonable parking, if that parking ain't available, they're not going to show up. And if they don't start showing up, it's not going to be worth doing. And you'll figure that out on your own. That's why, again, we don't give economic business advice here. But I think that some of these uses, the parameters dictate the success one way or the other. And it sounds like everybody's relying on this as more of a neighborhood thing. If I'm coming from the south side of Des Moines where I live, if it's going to be difficult for me to park a car there, I probably won't return. So, and I don't mean that about your event. I mean that about any event. So I guess I'm kind of in the middle here. Staff is recommending 5 years. You could do it up to once a week. Dave has said, and we do reinforce this from an educational standpoint, we don't care how long the conditional use says you can operate. If there's a problem, we'll take it away. I can understand some concerns here about, well, let's give this a trial run. But I do wonder in this case, we don't have big bands with amplified music. You're not selling alcohol. What risk are we really up against? You know what, if I lived on 39th Street and I was concerned about parking before I went to work, I'd pull my car out in the street. Because, I got a right to park in front of my house. And then, and I don't play ball that way, but, but if anybody's worried about securing parking in front of their house, well then, if their car's already on the street, you don't get to use that. But we don't dictate who can use public parking on a city street. That's not within our realm, unless there's limitations, again, on hours or time. Yes?
I've really enjoyed this discussion.
Yeah,
with everyone.
I'm not sure if they do.
No, yeah, well, I do feel more comfortable knowing that there's additional parking, that they have agreements with the church that's, blocked down 2 minutes away, and then the credit union. Mm-hmm. So with that, I would be in favor of making a motion to recommend the staff recommendation here with
Okay.
the 11 conditions, knowing that the neighbors are going to be, supervising.
Paying attention.
Paying attention.
Yeah.
So,
Second.
All right, that's easy enough. So we have a motion by Justin, second by Dave, with some good discussion and probably some clear winks and nods of some ideas of how you should probably kick this off right. So all those in favor of granting the requested approval of the conditional use subject to the staff recommendations presented, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. I'll look for it online and I'll be there. All right, thank you all for coming down and your patience this afternoon. Patrick, thank you for coming down. Okay, so we have one other item on our agenda today here, and I believe that is item number 5. That's a review of a conditional use at 2615 Ingersoll Avenue. So since this is the zoning enforcement officer, I might need a reminder, help us,
Sure.
who goes first, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, again, Bert Ross, planning staff for the city. This is actually a review of a decision
Okay.
from 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, the zoning officer determined that the yacht club had been a nuisance.
Okay.
And brought the conditional use back to the board
Yep.
for reconsideration. At that time, the board amended the conditional use and put a condition on it that said it shall be valid for a 1-year period, after which the conditional use shall be reviewed by the board. So,
Okay.
again, I'll just go through this presentation quickly. I see the property owner or the business owner aren't here. I know we've had some email dialogue with them. This was actually an application the city staff put on the agenda rather than the
Okay.
property or business owner, which is probably part of the reason they're not here. But again, the property is the Yacht Club. It's in the west end of this building here. There's the new Star Lofts, 3-story
Catchy
mixed-use
name.
building. What's that?
Catchy name.
Yeah, yeah, we replaced the Star gas station, so it's definitely an improvement there at that site. But this, give you some more background information. This is a photo of the Yacht Club. This is the decision in order from 2 years ago. So if you remember, March meeting of 2022, the board reconsidered the conditional use. They put on 12 conditions. The first one was, again, for that probationary period of 12 months. We didn't get flagged by our system until they came in for the liquor license renewal, which is why it's a little bit longer than the 12 months, but I don't think there's any harm done there. In the 2-year period, we really haven't received any complaints. They've been a good neighbor. I think they got their act together. So jumping ahead, our staff recommendation really is to make no changes, just to eliminate that one condition that says it shall be reviewed after the 1-year period. Thank you. I would also just point out that there was some discussion with the applicant or the business owner about changing some of the hours, because right now they're required to stop at 12 o'clock midnight, and this order rescinds the patio. Those things aren't changing, so if the applicant would want to change those, they would have to file their own application to request an amendment to the conditional use. So it's possible it could be on a future agenda, but at this time the applicant hasn't requested any amendments to the other conditions. So let's go through our staff recommendation. Like I said, there haven't been any issues at the property since the March 2022 Board of Adjustment agenda. I'm sure the zoning officer can give an update as well, but because of no issues, we have recommended just to remove that first condition that had the 12-month probationary period. So, any questions for me?
Questions for Bert?
We did get a couple cards. Sure.
Bert, so that I'm not up here editorializing, pontificating any more than normal. One of the concerns, I think, that was presented before with a lot of the problems at the site, whether we could put our thumb on it or not, the Star gas station being next door, there was parking there for the gas station. Some people were at the gas station with motorcycles. Maybe they were mixing, mingling with the crowd at the bar. I don't know. But it appeared pretty evident that a lot of the past concerns might have been related to the Star gas station being kind of the hub of a lot of stuff going on. that's gone now.
Right.
So I think from my perspective, I almost feel like this is a little more of a neighborhood bar again. But again, this is about questions here for you. Did you talk to the quote, conditional use permit holder and just say what you were recommending approval
Right,
then?
right. And like I said, they wanted to use this as an opportunity to expand their hours, get the patio back, but we made it clear that this was just the city putting it on for the review. So if they want to make those requests, they'd have to file a new application.
And I know, this may or may not be within the evidence or information here, but we now do have, when you say Star Lofts, are these owner occupied, or do you know?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
They could be, but I don't think.
But in essence, we now just don't have a gas station.
Right.
We now have people living here. So if people are like, they want, more expanded this, that, or the other thing for patios and such, probably need to review that again separately, I would think.
Right, that's true.
So yeah, but with the general conditions as they are, including no real complaints, no police problems to any excess degree.
Right.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay. All right, anything else, Bert?
Didn't really have anything.
And did this require any notification to surrounding owners?
We did notify 250
And-
feet, which is why we had those cards. We had
There we go again, okay.
a couple cards.
I was just distracted for a minute, sorry. Yeah, I've got it. But again, can't really tell what the concern was from.
Yeah, nobody's
Right.
leaving any comments, so
Right.
Yeah,
have you, yeah?
We
no?
didn't have any conversations with those people.
okay. All right. Any other questions for Bert? Okay. All right, thank you. And then I guess in this case, is there an option for any testimony? If anybody in the audience wants to speak on this issue, or zoning enforcement officer, would you like to say something?
Chair, members of the board, Chris Hulscove, zoning enforcement officer. Just to summarize real quick, Bert did a great job of kind of summarizing what's happened there with the historical perspective. We are just facilitating the application to remove that probationary status of this conditional use permit. Generally, we haven't had any complaints here. It's been operating within the conditions that were imposed by this board back in April of 2022. I do know I would pay close attention to the first 4 conditions that were imposed there that are listed. The other ones are pretty standard for all of our conditional use permits. With the new multifamily building, it's probably important to consider the patio area. But again, we have not received any complaints or had any concerns. So we would, from zoning enforcement, are in support of the staff's recommendation. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Chris. Okay, so, anybody else want to speak on this from the public's concern? Seeing none, we'll close public portion, go to board deliberation. All right, so staff's recommending carry on with the conditions that were the same conditions as before, aside from, it looks like we would be removing any condition requiring further periodic review there, right? Yeah. Justin?
Chair, I remember this discussion quite vividly, and this shows me that, the system works. We put the condition on, we put a probation, it came back, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and now we can remove it. So I'm glad to see that. So I'm all for it, and I'll be voting to approve the removal of condition 1.
Okay. Yeah, under the staff recommendation, and I didn't want to misspeak here, staff recommends conditional use with conditions 1 through 12. We had the old condition here with a condition 1, but we don't even have to acknowledge that now, because we have a new set of conditions, correct? Gary, can you help us?
That's right.
Yeah.
Essentially, as Bert said, as Justin summarized, it's just removing that, what was condition 1 before, that required them to come back for this reevaluation,
Okay.
essentially. So,
Right.
yeah, Bert's got it highlighted there.
Okay.
So can I make a motion for staff?
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, that's
I'll second.
clear enough. All right, so motion by Dave, second by Heather. Just wanted to be clear for the record on all that. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. That motion carries 6-0. Should be easy enough to continue forward. City staff, do we have any other business besides minutes? Seeing none. Anybody? Oh, yeah, we'll have elections next month. I don't want to make an undue announcement here because I hope he's here next month, but Justin's going to be leaving us. He's not moving from Des Moines, right? Right. He'll be leaving us to serve the larger community in some other ways, I'll just say that. But we'll have him here at the next meeting as well, so we can give him a full congratulations and appreciation for his board time, but we get him for one more meeting, so. So I encourage all of you, as you usually do, to be here next month, so we can give him a good send-off here at the hearing and elsewise. So if you were here last month, any changes to the minutes? If none, would there be a motion by a board member to approve the minutes? Moved by Marlis, second by Rhonda. All those in favor that were here last month, raise your right hand, say aye. That motion carries 5-0. All right, this hearing is adjourned.